I'm a member of the Tel Aviv Jaffa City Council on behalf of Meretz. One of six. We are the largest faction on City Council here in Tel Aviv Jaffa.
Wow. How many people are on the City Council?
31.
And how many are
Six.
Six.
Yeah, we have Tel Aviv at least.
They got 31 members and 6 are mayors.
31 members, six of us are two deputy mayors. We're okay. And I'm also running or heading an organization called Be Free Israel, Israel Chofshit. It's a social change movement that promotes or wishes to promote freedom of and from religion in Israel, and of course religious pluralism, Jewish pluralism. So I'll start by describing a bit where do we stand with this issue of religious pluralism, and I'll go with the basics because as I understand that the group is quite diverse and of course it's a complicated issue and it's always better to start from the beginning. So when we go and talk about religious pluralism in Israel, we must go to the foundation of the State of Israel, even earlier a bit, but I'm not going to go that early, to the Zionist movement and the way it worked. While it was clear to people like Theodor Herzl that separation between church and religion and state, or church and state, must be part of the Jewish state when it will be established, because he believed it should be state for the Jews, meaning a solution for the Jewish problem, anti-Semitism all over the world. There are people that thought that this should be the Jewish state, meaning the Jewishly religious state, and this was quite a big debate. But the real problem actually starts with David Ben-Gurion, the founder of the State of Israel, that in order to be the only representative of Jews living in the land of Israel back then, or Palestine, he thought it would be a good deal to create with the ultra-Orthodox representation in Israel that thought of saying, like, we're not part of because they were not part of the Jewish agency that founded the country. They thought it would be a good idea that they'll be represented separately, and the Zionist movement will. And he was really worried about it because he thought the UN people would come here. It was just after one of the committees of the UN that should have come here to speak about the establishment of the state, and it was really important for him to be the only representation. So he goes to the leaders of Agudas Israel, of the ultra-Orthodox representation here, and he creates a deal with them. This deal is somehow still, supposedly at least, with us on issues in religion and state. I'll start talking about each one of the elements or aspects of this deal and how do they look today, okay? So first of all, and the most clear cut, was about personal status. David Ben-Gurion gave what was back then and still exists, the rabbinate.
What is that?
The rabbinate. It's the ultra-Orthodox or Orthodox establishment of rabbis who got or received the monopoly over marriage, divorce, religious services in Israel. Conversion as well. Yeah, conversion as well. The issue of conversion was not that big back then, but definitely today.
But ceding in a way state rights, like marriage in every other democracy, ceding state rights to the rabbinate, they kind of took over, right?
It didn't took over, they received it.
They received, yeah. He had to beg them on his knees.
Yeah.
Please take this over.
Yeah. So today,
they've taken on
completely civic rights. There is no other way to get married today in Israel other than by the religious institutions. If you're Jewish, you will have to go through the monopoly of the rabbinate. I'm not talking even Jewish wedding, only Orthodox wedding in a certain way. We're dealing today, speaking of conversion, of Orthodox, modern Orthodox rabbis like Rabbi Avi Weiss from New York or others, that their Orthodox conversion is not being accepted by the rabbinate in Israel.
Like Ivanka Trump's conversion.
Yeah, Ivanka.
We don't want her as a Jew anyway.
Ivanka made an important service to Orthodox conversion seriously, because since she became an issue, all of a sudden the conversions of Rabbi Asher Pating or whatever was there got accepted. But other than that, it wouldn't have been. So the only way Jews can get married is through the rabbinate, this monopoly institution of Orthodox rabbi. If you're a Muslim, is the Sharia law, is the Muslim institutions, and if you're a Christian, is according to your Christian church. Depends where. What happens if an atheist, or if you
Interfaith.
Interfaith marriage? There is no such opportunity in Israel. First of all, atheism is not considered to be. They don't accept atheism as a path, and even more so, let's talk about people that came here as part of law of return. Let's say, because according to law of return, if one of your grandparents is Jewish, you are entitled to Israeli citizenship.
But not marriage.
Exactly. So we're talking about, for example, out of the million immigrants that came from former Soviet Union in the 90s, about 300,000 of them, or even more today because of children and so on, people that do not have a way to get married in the state of Israel. They must go outside of Israel in order to get married. And also the issue of civil marriage abroad that being accepted by the state of Israel, and they are accepted. By the way, both LGBT and regular marriage are accepted. If you got married outside of Israel, you'll be registered as married. However, where the problem comes again is even if you got married outside of Israel by, I don't know, it's in Cyprus or in Prague by a Czech, clerk or something, you'll still need to get divorced by the religious institutions.
Oh my God.
And I think, at least in my experience, the Ministry of the Interior is subject to their rules, because I was written as married, and next to it, in parentheses, it said conservative synagogue, so that everyone will know that it's not a kosher.
So today, they don't write it that way.
Oh, they don't. Misrad Apnim does not write it.
No, they write like married or non, like
That's it.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't say, because it's by the Supreme Court decision. It's completely it's the same, but still divorce will need to be. It was funny because one of the first gay couples that got married in Israel, after a certain time, like everyone were supposed to be divorced. Wanted to be divorced, and they were both Jewish. So there is no way for two Jews to get divorced other than through the rabbinate in Israel. So they had to get a special letter, like there was a special decision of the family law court for them to get divorced, because otherwise they couldn't have got divorced because they were two Jews. So this is
what if it's an interfaith divorce that you want to have?
No, within
interfaith
interfaith divorce, the rabbinate should accept or recognize the fact that one of the couples is not Jewish, and then it will allow the family law court.
But it's still the rabbinate who would have to grab that.
Yeah.
Will any of the faiths accept an LGBT marriage?
What?
Will any of the three faiths accept? So LGBT marriage in Israel is illegal unless you get married outside.
Right. There is no the marriage.
Path.
There is no path for marriage LGBT marriage.
And recently, wasn't there a controversy about like we call them PSAs, public service announcement, or like an advertisement promoting LGBT marriage?
No marriage. There was a big scandal here because the Pride Parade in Tel Aviv is one of the largest parades in the world, and it brings a lot of great PR to Israel as a progressive, liberal country in the middle of the heart of the Middle East. So the Ministry of Tourism put 14 million shekels in advertising this parade, with a good reason. It's really a good place to be a gay person here, to live in Tel Aviv.
You don't want to get married.
But not to get married. But no, seriously, both by law and by social elements. But to put 14 million shekels into it without talking about rights, without even investing so much money in the LGBT organization. So yeah, there was a big scandal over it of the LGBT community, because they said you can't just use us for PR but not actually invest in our.
Right.
So what do they do with divorce for conservative and reform? If they don't recognize the marriage
It's crazy.
as marriage, how could they get divorced?
They do get lechumra. They do a divorce for any case. You know, they go with the worst kind of like opportunity, like, because it's always better to have a divorce, because divorce is the problem, not the marriage.
Oh.
Because the divorce, if a woman is not divorced and she has a baby from another man, the child will be a bastard, a mamzer.
So they'd rather,
Yeah, exactly.
even if the marriage was conducted.
Right.
I'm going to ask a silly question. Has anybody ever considered just having a business where they take a boat off the
They have,
coast and get
Yeah.
they have businesses like this.
My friends went to Cyprus
I know
to do
about the
it.
Cyprus. I know the Cyprus thing, but it's a lot easier.
Yeah,
to
they
just
did.
Say about 3 miles, 5 miles.
So they can't do it just 3 or 4 miles, because you have to have a certain state authorizing you as a married couple. You need to have a
can't
license
do it
of
in
some.
international.
But you do have like a business of boats going all the way to Cyprus and
Oh,
and
wow.
by the way, we in Israel Chofshit, what we do today, one of the things that we do, we marry couples outside of the Rabbanut. They're not recognized, but we do a secular or non-denominational Jewish wedding, the tekes itself, and we have people signing a common law agreements with us, because the common law in Israel, the common law agreements here give you almost the same, 95% of the same right of married couples. It's not actually better to be a married couple here. You can have a good agreement between you as a couple and gives you all the rights, except for all adoption and surrogacy. Social security, all of it, same completely.
And
So
who
we,
does the secular weddings? Is that your organization that does the secular?
yeah, we do it. We do like Jewish secular weddings.
Jewish secular.
Yeah, because we do somehow talk with the tradition. Like, people want to have the chuppah, but they do their own ceremony. They do, like, they bring things from their own experiences, from their own story, but do also, have some sort of a Jewish elements to it, because people do want to have Jewish weddings. It's important for people, but they don't want to have rabbinical Jewish weddings. So this is the first thing, is the issue of marriage and divorce. And definitely when we talk about Russian-speaking community, and Vicky will come here soon, it's a major, major issue. It's a major issue because if our parents, and I come myself from Russian origin, but I was born here, but if our parents were immigrants that just want to get around and, immigrants mentality, like you just want to do everything safe and quiet, you don't fight for your rights, you just want to allow your children a better future, the generation that came here as children or born here are not really willing to accept anymore the fact that they're second-class citizens. And I really believe that if there is future for this struggle in Israel, the Russian community will be a very dominant element in it. So this is the first thing. Second thing here is Shabbat. As you all know, Saturday is the official day for the vacation, the rest of in Israel, as it should be. By the way, I think this is exactly where cultural elements can be part of state law. We truly believe in rights of workers to have their rest and so on. But so everything will be, all the official offices and so on will be closed on Shabbat. Where the dynamics start to be complicated. It starts to be complicated when we talk about, let's say, and now we're facing it, opening or closing businesses on Shabbat. Not all businesses, but for example, here in Tel Aviv, we have shops open on Shabbat when people want, to go to the beach to buy a bottle of water on the way. Should they be allowed? Shouldn't they be allowed? Of course, cafes, movie theaters, culture and arts. So there is kind of a consensus around culture and arts, I think, or it's getting there. That the issue of businesses is really and I think we should have a smart answer for the business issue, because you don't want to have your rest day completely because the concept of working all 24/7 all your life is not the best concept, because you need to rest as part of what employees or workers get in their rights. But the real issue that bothers people here, and with a good reason, is the issue of public transportation. All researches, surveys, polls show two things. First of all, no country in the world will be able to expand the way we expand, to have the amount of houses we have, the amount of the size of the roads, without moving more and more into public transportation. Public transportation is not only a needed issue, it's a social need. It's a real social need today. Think about it, if every person in the world, and we live today 90 years, 100 years, will drive her or his car, it would be impossible. And no one will give up his private car if fourth of the day of the year. Why fourth? Because we have Shabbat and we have holidays. The public transportation system here does not work. It's not anymore only an issue of secular rights. It's the issue of how can you maintain or keep public transportation to be actually worthwhile without it working on weekends. By the way, interestingly enough, there are cities that do have public transportation on Shabbat, like Haifa, because they used to have it before the status quo agreement, this agreement that I'm talking about.
So they were grandfathered in.
So this is the second thing, and if you want to look at an area where the secular population in Israel really wins, is the issue of Shabbat. Now we had a major struggle in Tel Aviv on the issue of the businesses on Shabbat, mainly supermarkets or small supermarkets. We were sued at the court as a municipality. The municipality changed the law that it would allow, and now it would allow 160 businesses to be open on Shabbat. And out of 400, no and bylaw of a city needs to be signed by the Interior Minister of Interior. No Minister of Interior wanted to sign this bylaw because of the controversy of this issue. But at the same time, despite the power of the ultra-religious parties, no one really worked against the fact that Shabbat will be completely closed. I think that this area of the day-to-day life, when religion and state meets the day-to-day life, not marriage and divorce, but actually public transportation on Shabbat, shops on Shabbat, issues to do with selling and kosher food, like things that are not the most important one, but meet people in their daily life, and they don't want people to look into their plate of what. This is where people really work against it, and we see success. Even the ultra-Orthodox party is kind of like silent about the fact that Israel is basically open on Shabbat. So Shabbat is the third thing that we need to look at, and second. The third thing that we have to look is easy one. Is kashrut, kosher. All the public institutions in Israel are kosher by law. But we had now a really interesting Supreme Court case about kashrut. Because it's not enough that they need to be kosher. Kosher became a tagline or brand that belongs to the rabbinate. Meaning, if liberal Jews want to have their own echsherim, kosher institutions, they're not allowed to. The ultra-Orthodox, by the way, that do have their own kashrut systems, they're allowed to. They have different separate systems of kashrut. But if you want to have more, by the way, not even progressive Jews, we're talking about modern Orthodox institutions that want to have their own kashrut, they were not allowed by the law. and they had
Aren't
to.
there rabbis who are doing it now?
What? Yes,
And
there are.
kashrut outside.
They
and
do.
they're Orthodox rabbis.
They do, but the Supreme Court actually decided against them,
Oh.
and they don't call it anymore kashrut. They call it some other name. But now it's going to be appealed to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what happens with. But this is exactly where the monopoly plays an ugly role.
Super expensive to get kosher.
Here it's not. Here it's not that expensive because it's very common. It does with some elements, and definitely with import, it does add something, but it's not super. It's not because this is the popular. This is what regular food looks like. So it's not that. It's not the issue of price. It's the issue of power. Because we hear so many business people that tell that the mashgiach does not come and comes every end of month, take his checks and that's it. And he says that if you're going to say something against the way I act or differently, I'll just take your hechsher. And it's really ugly system because the business pays. Not the business is the one paying the mashgiach, but the people who that actually check if the mashgiach works are the rabbinate. So
Kind of like extortion.
It
Of course.
is.
Yes.
Everybody is.
Does the rabbinate pay the mashgiach at all?
no, the business.
Only the business.
The business pays them.
Right. If the business has the ability to say, but you don't come. You come here once a month. Why am I paying so much money? And he can say what you just mentioned. Fine. Then I'll just take your hechsher away. End of story.
No.
Don't criticize me, in other words.
Right.
So
No.
what is that, the hashir?
Heckshare, it's like it's the sign
It's
that
It's
the
you
called
put through.
kashrut certificate.
Got it, okay. So it's not,
It's making something kosher, giving it.
it's a little K.
Certified.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the K on your food.
So so the issue of kashrut in public institutions is clear to me. I support it, but what became of kashrut because of the monopoly and the way it works is horrible. It's a complete corrupt business. And the fourth thing that we look at is education. Of course, in Israel we have few systems. We have the mamlachti, the regular public school. We have the national religious public schools. And the ultra-Orthodox got their own, not all ultra-Orthodox, also some Christian institutions, but ultra-Orthodox got their own independent school system that is funded by the government as well. According, by the way, to the agreement, core curriculum was supposed to be taught in all schools. But this is actually changed through the years because the Haredi parties, the ultra-Orthodox parties, were able, at least for boys, girls do learn core curriculum, but for boys to just to have less and less ultra-Orthodox schools to study core curriculums studies within their schools. So they study only religious studies without math, English, civics, and so on.
So what happened to the idea of the status quo?
So the status quo is the one. So the status quo is the most unstatic thing in Israel. By the way, you know, Zehava Galon, the chair of Meretz, started her political career in the 80s fighting to open a cinema in Petah Tikva where she lives. There is a big story called the Kolnoa Eichal, the Eichal cinema in Petah Tikva. And in the 80s, all of the cinemas in Israel were closed. Today, during the weekend, you'll go to, we have cinemas open. So it didn't change only on one end. It changed a lot, over the years. And if to be honest, it went more and more towards the secular side, not the religious side. But of course, one of the things that you do learn that the status quo is a tool or language the politicians use in order to avoid dealing with this hot potato that is called religion state affairs in Israel. Because if you look at Israel, by any UN measurement, we're one of the last countries in the world, along with Iran, Saudi Arabia, and others, on issues of freedom of religion. Yes, please.
if we had somebody here who was from an ultra orthodox school, a principal or a teacher, what would they say about that? They don't teach math, civic science, etc. What would they agree with that statement, or would they disagree?
They will, first of all, not all of them, but part of them.
No.
Part of them will agree because they think they teach math as much as their kids need. This is what they claim. They say the thought that all of us need to have the same schooling system is wrong, and the fact that their kids are if their kids are gonna learn it, it's the way the seculars are trying to impact or influence. They're gonna say it out loud. It's not a secret.
This was what Yehuda Glick was speaking about yesterday when we met with him at the Knesset. He was talking about how he was against coercion. So yes, he thought math and English were important, but he didn't think it should be forced on the ultra-Orthodox.
Yeah. By the way, I could see this kind of like liberal approach of saying like we can't force anyone to do anything. But I think that when government does fund something, it needs to be kind of like a criteria.
How it works in the United States.
They do need basic knowledge. A bit about what's going on in this field nowadays, which is important. It's not only kashrut. We usually tend to look at the ultra-Orthodox community leadership as it's the one that stands against us on issues of religion and state. But today there is a really interesting phenomenon that changed reality here in Israel. And it is connected strongly to the settlement movement as well. We're facing growing power of a group called the National Ultra-Orthodox. Meaning, we call it in Hebrew, Chardal, Charedim Leumiyim, nationalistic Ultra-Orthodox. By the way, interestingly enough, the Ultra-Orthodox, the original Orthodox were anti-Zionist, but today we actually see that this community becomes more and more right-wing and extreme right-wing. The largest, I'm putting aside just a second national ultra-Orthodox, the largest cities in settlements today are ultra-Orthodox cities. Bless you.
Yeah, Beitar Elite and
Yeah, and Elad. No, Elad, Beitar Elite, yeah.
What's that? You said the original settlements were not Orthodox at all? But
No, not ultra-Orthodox.
not ultra-Orthodox.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the difference between ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox?
Okay, so ultra-Orthodox, what we call in Hebrew Haredi, are people, I'm generalizing, okay? It's a matter of course at the university, but I'm generalizing here. It's a group of people that, at the beginning at least, did not see itself as part of the Zionist movement.
Who's that, the ultra or the...
Ultra.
Okay.
Of the Zionist movement. They are followers of Chazon Ish and people who said Chadash Asur Min Torah. They are actually a reaction to enlightenment, okay, to secularism. And in the 19th century in Europe, there was a group of people that said that everything which is new is forbidden from the Torah. The Torah forbids you from every change or new elements in your life. This is the reason why you still see them wear clothes of let's say European Polish
aristocracy.
Yeah,
Right.
the ads that because
It's
Chadash.
an anachronism, a crazy anachronism in which they've taken local European aristocratic
ultra
clothes.
Yeah, right.
But is that the reason, or is it wearing the clothing of the oppressor? In other words, they were never allowed to be like the aristocrats.
Maybe the beginning of the reason for it, but why do they wear it till today? It's because Chadash Asur Min Torah, because a new thing, because changing the way you live your life is forbidden from the Torah. There is many of the halachic, many of the Jewish law today is not considered it's not because it's according to the Jewish law it's forbidden. It's because the concept of
No progress.
No progress is bind.
So Zionism considered progress to be ultra-Orthodox?
Yeah, sure. At the beginning. Now they're changing a bit, but yeah.
Let me just say that it goes completely against Jewish tradition and Jewish history that continually renewed and found new ways of doing it. that the whole experience, the diaspora experience, and since after the destruction of the temple, there was always movement forward. There was always change. This is a very reactionary.
It's reactionary. It's for effect reaction to the Enlightenment.
Yes.
Like it became
Exactly.
it's one next to each other. This is historically. Now the national religious element of society, which was interestingly enough a partner of the labor at the first year of Israel, those are what we call Torah v'Avodah, labor and or work and Torah. Those are people that their ideology, they saw themselves as those who Arav Kook, the Rabbi Kook was their thinker, and one of the concepts that of theirs was that they cannot wait for God to bring redemption,
Yes.
Geula, but they need to help it happen. Okay, they work, they take active part in society, they go to the army, they take major roles in public service.
They were socialists. They built kibbutzim.
They were socialists, by the way. Now they were socialists today. And after the '67, they've gone through a major change after the '67 war. They all of a sudden, because of the rabbis, they saw all of a sudden redemption coming. They saw the dream from the Bible actually coming true when they went back to areas where the Bible was talking about them. It's really almost messianic.
This is like Levenger.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, he didn't come from this community.
He didn't come, but he was
No.
really, he was definitely a leader.
Right, yeah.
But Gush Emunim,
Gush Emunim did.
yeah. And these people in '67 have changed completely, and their basic ideology, and again I'm generalizing, okay? You'll meet people that don't think about it that same way, but generally, the issue of settlement and settle the land and the project of the occupation became their major project. But they still, and it was really important for them, they were still part of Israeli society by all means. And they see themselves, if the ultra-Orthodox, despite the monopoly and everything, see themselves, first of all, as an autonomy of people that care of their own life, and this is what they're in charge of. The national religious movement is about Klal Israel, is about having responsibility for the entire state of Israel. We're not responsible only for ourselves, but for the entire state of Israel.
No,
In the last few years, mainly after the disengagement for Gaza, this community had gone through another change, a major change. They felt that they are part of everything. They put so much effort in this country, but when settlements were dismantled, regular Israelis from Tel Aviv, let's say, were not there with them when the Gaza disengagement happened. And they started a new movement that called, they create settlements now, not only in the settlements, but they settle in people's hearts. I'm gonna read you a quote from Avichai Boaron, who is one of the leaders of Amona, of the settlement that is now being, was a major conflict between the government and between the government and the Supreme Court. One of the new leaders of the settler movements. People, and he says it, I'm going to translate. So Avichai Boaron, he says like, our friends from the Yesha Council, from the settler movement. Almost 30 years, we're killing ourselves. We're working really hard. We're doing a great job, even amazing. We're explaining our thoughts. We're working against all the bad things coming against us. In the army, in economy, in the law, in the law system. But we need to look into the future and to understand that it's about time to go into educational journey. Educational journey of the entire Israeli public, children and youth, old people and women. The word of God and Ol Malchuto, and the rule of God will be among us, will be a national element only if we're gonna actively teach towards it. And in the last years after the disengagement, we really see these national religious extreme elements settling mainly in secular neighborhoods, going into schools. But how can they go into schools? Because the education system or other things push you into studying Jewish culture and Jewish tradition, which is great. But those who have the money to go into these schools and work in these neighborhoods are these national religious elements. And we all of a sudden see Jewish culture being taught in completely secular schools connected to this national religious way of thinking of Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Torah Yisrael, the people of Israel, the land of Israel, and the Torah of Israel.
And this is Bennett.
This is Bennett, and even more so Uri Ariel,
Yeah.
Tkuma within the Beit
Do
HaYehudi.
these people feel, do these people agree that math and,
They have no problem with math.
oh, so they're not people who want to
Yeah.
present-
No, they
No.
just want to change
they
what
want to
people view
excel
as.
in it, probably.
They want people to understand, like to take on their, think that Judaism is their brand of
And,
Judaism.
B, to be connected to the land. The issue of settlements is really important for them, and the land, Jewish superiority. Jewish superiority is a big thing of them. Racism, and they are supported completely by government-run institutions that are taken by their party, which is the Jewish Home. So today we don't look only at issues of civil rights like marriage and divorce, we actually look also of the concept of what does it mean to be Jewish, or what kind of education of Jewish tradition will be taught at schools, and what political elements it will have in our day-to-day life. They're not waiting for us to educate our own kids about their Jewish tradition, but they use this language of Jewish culture and Jewish tradition and Jewish history in order to take a political path. And if you look at Israel today is going through, actually pioneered in having the Trump effect. We had the Trump effect before Trump was elected in America, because this government is kind of within the same lines. But if in the rest of the world, in America or in the UK, if you looked at who voted for Brexit, it was mainly the older generation. Younger generation was completely liberal, completely progressive, completely was against it. Same thing with the vote for Trump. In Israel, it's not the case.
Opposite.
The younger generation is more right-wing than the older generation. As Eitan Kabel, one of the members of Knesset from Labour Party, says all the time, every time that you hear an ambulance going, it's either our voter that dies or their voter that is born.
Was born.
Wow.
Why do you
How
think that
do,
is?
how do,
What?
Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is? A, because we're not certain enough in our ideology. We're not positive because we're pluralistic in our perspective. We question so much ourselves. They have a clear Torah. They have a clear message to carry. They really fascinate. Like it's here. It's here. It comes from here, and they go and work in every place. They have a mission and they follow it. If one of the things that I could do today in Israel Chofshit, and I hope I'll be able to grow it, We train and organize the public. I come to Rehovot, El Hadera, and Beersheba, and places, and work in the public everywhere they are. The right wing has been doing it for so many years.
And are you doing anything to bring together the non-Jewish communities as well, who I'm sure don't want Jewish
No, so first of all, they are not
religion coming into their
the non-Jewish element of society suffer from many other things as a minority here, not from this element of it. Okay, they're dismissed at least from this part because Jewish superiority is also not teaching the non-Jewish Jewish tradition.
But in terms of things like Shabbat, like no public transportation on Shabbat.
So we did have, for example, when we appealed the Supreme Court about public transportation on Shabbat, we did have Palestinian Israelis appealing with us. However, to be honest, and we have to say it, the Arab population in Israel is way more traditional than the Jewish population in Israel. They're not really keen into joining a secular movement. We do have, for example, non-Jews in our courses, Arabs mainly, but you can count them. You know, we had 3 in Beersheba, 2 in Haifa, but they're not masses. And I think that the second thing that the minority here suffers because of the majority, because they want their Jewish control over things. The other religious elements keep on. So it's time to work on the majority and not the minority.
Miki,
Yeah.
how does Connect get their curriculum into the schools?
So it's not their curriculum; it's their elements. Because what happens? Just a second.
Well, oh, no, it's fine.
How? Because it also has to do a lot with the Jewish, and here it's us to blame. Okay, the Jewish renewal movement had created a language that it was really important, like moreshet, like a Jewish tradition, like Jewish culture, and we wanted to bring it into schools. And what happened is that they live in this neighborhood, and they come to the principal of the school and offer them, you know what, you want me to go and teach your kids about the holidays? And it's for free. And they go into the schools and teach the kids about the holidays. And then schools can get bnot shirut, like volunteers, those who don't go to the army but volunteer for national service, and they can get as a help in the class national service girls. And all of a sudden, we see them everywhere, and it's not necessarily very clear. It's not about they're becoming the teachers of our kids, but and by the way, and also when you open books today, the curriculum, it's there, it's completely there. They changed the civics books now, and it becomes more and more significant. Listen, we're not talking about a revolution here. It's evolution. It's step by step. It's something that we are getting to understand it really now. It's been around for 10 years. It's not that they're not rude, and they're not unnice, and they don't look extreme. But when you go deeper into the ideology, it's there. By the way, the army is the same now. Now rabbis are trying to prevent female officers and soldiers to serve in certain units because they don't want them to mix with the men, and prayers, like really, really harsh prayers, are being prayed before going to a battle, and a lot of these elements are gently going into the mainstream Israeli public. And by the way, again, in the army, Bina, which is a secular Jewish yeshiva kind of a thing, like Jewish education, secular Jewish education, and Hartman, if you heard of the Hartman Institute, used to teach it in the army, like Jewish identity, and this.
That was different.
Yeah, they kicked them out.
But one thing I don't understand, if for doing national service, young women go in and act as teacher aides. I mean, at least in the States, if someone is an aide, they follow the instruction of the teacher and they help out, but they don't come in and present their own curriculum.
So they don't present really, you don't have really to present your own curriculum, but you're at school and you meet the kids, and sometimes you're a religious girl, and one of the things that you can say about secular Israelis, they're ignorant about their own tradition. So for a secular teacher to have a religious girl coming and teach about Passover, it's really a
So it's
treat.
more subtle.
Yeah, it's treat.
Well, and
'Cause
also probably feels authentic too.
Yeah.
Like you have somebody who's religious who knows what the holiday is about versus a secular person.
Wow.
So-
And what is it? Can you elaborate on the difference between on how the disengagement from Gaza?
Was connected to it.
Yeah, how is it connected?
Because in the disengagement from Gaza, these people or this movement started to feel that they thought they were part of the core Israeli society. They felt that they're Israel, and they thought, and their rabbis promised them that nothing will happen. They would not be, pulled out of their homes, and it happened. And very few Israelis actually stood up with them there.
Yeah.
It was very quiet. And all of a sudden they realized that despite the fact they felt very much part of this society, they were not able to educate. They were not able to influence Israeli society. We look at Israel today and say it's a right-wing country. Only 10 years ago, a bit more, dozens of people were pulled out of their houses. There was a big dismantlement of settlements. This was a real trauma for this public, a real trauma. This is what proved them that they're not, if they want to have their ideology and their perception as part of Israeli society, they need to go in and deep and educate and teach and change people's perception.
Didn't they use the synagogue as their last stand and photographed it? It was all over the television, right?
Right. It was first of all, the disengagement was a real trauma. Period.
Right.
I'm not arguing
But to
with it.
see people out of their homes is one thing, but to see them hugging a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll, and wearing prayer shawls, it seems an attack not just on settlements, but on Judaism itself, right?
And they felt it. They really felt it. To be honest, they're very sophisticated and they're very genuine in their ideology. Why are they succeeding? Because they're really genuine about their ideology. And what's our role in this matter is to offer ideological attachment, to offer not only ideological perspective, but also ideological attachment, meaningful perception of what does it mean to have a Jewish democratic state. Yes.
Can I just make a small comment? 'Cause I agree with you, but I do want to state, because you're talking about like the aids, the religious aids, and Jimmy, you said, oh, it's more authentic. I personally don't mind to have religious girl doing it or teaching about the holidays. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing if they will see it. The question is, it's not just what's being taught, it's what's not being taught. And that's what you said about the alternative. So for me, like my mom works in a school like with people with disabilities. They have religious aides that are who are national service, who are doing really amazing work there. They're like really saving those kids' lives. Some of them. They're not all like that. I just want to make that.
No, the issue.
No. I'm just saying. I agree with you. I agree that they penetrate into the system, but my issue is what's not being taught. I think it's good to show people like a variety of things and like the spectrum of Judaism.
I completely agree on this matter. The issue is not the fact that they are here. We are pro-religious teachers, religious.
Yeah.
It's not the issue. It's the issue if they're connected to this garin, to this element that came into the neighborhood in order to teach a certain thing. What's their real goal? What do they teach? Do we show? By the way, I wouldn't mind my kids, for example, learning about the settlement movement or their ideology, but I do want to get them a diversity, and I don't want them to replace teachers.
Exactly. That's the only thing I was
Yeah,
adding.
I don't want them to replace.
As
I'm completely for breaking the silence, going into schools, but I wouldn't want them to
be the only
go.
voice.
The only voice, and this is exactly where it stands. The issue of education and the issue of the military and their fight against it, and we're talking about national ultra-Orthodox groups, is really, really, and I always have asked myself, I'm fighting over the army issue, over the issue of, for the girls to have rights to be in combat units and so on. It's like, why would you fight over the army issues? We need to fight that no one will go to the army. But I think that the army defines in many ways the way the society thinks and works here, and whoever is willing to kind of like detach itself from the army and what's going on in the army will detach himself or herself from Israeli society to end it.
What do you think the military's ideology is?
The military actually, I want to say something about this current commander-in-chief of the army. He's he's a smart guy, and he's not willing to completely cooperate with these elements of radicalization. But at the end of the day, it's an army. It's an army. It's an occupying power. There's a lot of elements that I don't feel comfortable with. But the military in Israel is a very strong social and educational element, and they are fighting against the rabbis. When this commander, I didn't want to go into details, but it's important. When this commander-in-chief became the commander-in-chief, he closed a department within the rabbinate, the religious rabbinate, the military rabbinate that dealt with the Ayudit, with Jewish notion. They had a Jewish notion or some consciousness, department, and he closed it because this was exactly the path of the Chardal, of the national religious elements, to educate every soldier in the army. It was really their
indoctrination.
Element within the army, and they had a role. And he closed it completely. He said the education department needs to deal with that, and not the rabbinate.
I've discussed with Rotem a bit about the Azaria case and the issue of the relationship. I was in Hebron on Saturday, and the relationship that the soldiers who might not be religious have with the religious settlers living in places like Hebron. And so is that another way that this kind of ideology is penetrated in terms of the cozy relationships that the army, that the soldiers are having with the settlers?
Here it's not only the religious element, it's mainly the settler ideology. That there is no doubt. Listen, when I served in the army, I was serving here, like I was an intelligence officer. But I did like my, when I was in the officer's course, I did my guardian duty in settlements. And they were extremely nice people. Truly, they cared a lot of me as a person, as a soldier, and everything. They got me into their houses, and all of a sudden, these people are becoming friends of yours, and those who give you home and cookies, and all of a sudden, and these are the people that you want to kick out of their homes. It's just unheard of. And of course, this personal attachment, and in many ways, the settlers run the occupation as much as the army ran the occupation. And definitely in places like Hebron, where it's all mixed together, you see, major settlers telling the army, you need to go there, you need to do that.
I mean, in the Azaria video, you even see him shake hands right after killing the Palestinian, the head settler.
Danger is
that they killed the terrorist.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying it's not that he didn't kill a Palestinian. He killed a terrorist that was lying on it. It's really important for us also to keep the terminology right, because it somehow happened within the progressive campaign in Israel and the world, that we forget the fact that the person there was a terrorist, that was shot at the end. He did a very illegitimate thing, because he shot a person in the head, a person that was supposed to be arrested. But we can't really treat this Palestinian guy as if he was just a Palestinian going on the street. And I think that
definitely not.
Yeah, no.
He was already
dead. Exactly.
We don't
know if this crime was worthy of capital punishment.
We're sure he was not.
He should have been treated as a human being.
Exactly. But we do sometimes forget the fact that this person did stab people in the backs.
I didn't forget.
No, I think that in our at least in Israel, in our terminology and the way we talk about it, we do not take into account the fact that it's important for us to notice the negative elements or the negative interactions also of the other side.
But I think it also, I mean, as I recall, he stabbed soldiers, no?
Right.
In the occupied territory,
That's
which
true.
under international law, those people are
Legitimate targets.
legitimate targets. So I don't think it's fair, and I'm studying law, human rights law, so I don't think it's particularly fair to classify someone who would be, if he were in uniform, he would be a combatant the same way one of your military is.
So first of all, I think that within the current situation, as much as I wouldn't want to have any Elor Azaria going just killing people even though he's wearing uniforms and shooting at people although they are combatants or anything else. I wouldn't want to see this person, according to me, terrorist, going stabbing people in their back even though they were soldiers. On this matter, it's really clear for me that no one allows to take other people's lives, even if he's person living under an occupied
There's no
territory.
difference though between a moral issue and a legal issue.
No, but I'm not talking about. First of all, according to Israeli law, he's a terrorist, and Israeli law applies. Okay, and I think also morally, to look at this person and not, and to be so cold in the way you judge the situation, in matter of not really respecting the fact that according to Israeli perspective, my personal perspective, he did stab 2 people